seeing the growth in those segments because the bandwidth intensity, transmission speed times distance, now exceeds 100 gigabit meters per second, which is the threshold at which, once you go beyond it, optical solutions are dramatically less expensive than copper solutions. So let me finish up the opportunities that we're trying to leverage our 3-4-5 framework with a new area for us, which is architecture. Earlier I talked about transparency in glass, and in fact, glass can range from fully transparent to essentially fully opaque. But for a conventional glass, its opacity is fixed at some point in its life. We're working with a company called View to change that. We're introducing electrochromic windows that change the tint on demand. That not only allows you to get rid of the shades, but allows you to experience the benefits of windows and natural light, like more productivity in offices and healthier environments in hospitals on a continuous basis, while at the same time you're increasing your comfort and reducing your costs for heating and cooling. So, to sum up, I think that right now, we, collectively, all of us and other companies, have an unprecedented opportunity to capture the power of glass to create a world with cleaner air, healthier lives, richer entertainment experiences, and superior communication. I think that glass components can be as important to the next 50 years as silicon components have been to the last 50 years. Glass components can be as important to the next 50 years as silicon components have been to the last 50 years. But we can't do it on our own. We need contributions from an ecosystem that includes hardware engineers, software engineers, artists, and industrial designers. Combinations of information content and entertainment content. Contributions from industry experts, visionaries, and entrepreneurs. We need collaborations among corporations, nonprofits, and academic institutions that take us beyond our own capabilities and resources and allow us to do something much more collectively. We need academics and mentors who get students excited about glass and give us a continuous pipeline of the next generation of resources. And we need conversations with futurists and end-use consumers about the capabilities they envision and the capabilities they require. And we need entrepreneurs who take some of the coolest and most important of these capabilities and make them real-world applications. So I'm excited to be here and begin that dialogue with all of you today, and I look forward to your questions and thoughts. Thanks.
The original ideas that initiate innovation, how many percent is it generated in-house?
A very high percentage. So I joined Corning 5 years ago, and as I was joining the company, the great-great-grandson, Jamie Houghton, of Corning's founder, took me out to lunch, and he told me that the most important thing that I had to do as an executive at Corning was maintain our commitment to R&D. Today, Corning invests about 8% of its sales, or $800 million a year, on R&D. We have over 1,000 PhDs working on R&D, and then other useless PhDs like me doing something else. So it's a very research and development driven company. We do, I would say, while most of our innovation is homegrown, we often work in tandem with other companies, which could be our customers or partners that we're going to offer a product with. That's a big part of what we do. I don't know how to put a value on it. When we were working on developing the strategy and capital allocation framework that I talked about earlier, we actually took a large set of past research programs at Corning, both failures and successes, and we did a statistical analysis related to decision trees. And the two things that came out as most important are, number one, that we already had some participation in the market and knowledge of the market already. So that was why we focused on two of the three opportunities that take up two of the three columns. But the other one was that we had a committed customer or partner who was going to help us make it happen. In the consumer electronics industry, our biggest customers are obviously Apple and Samsung. We work very closely with both of those companies, which is a real privilege to get to be a partner with two industry leaders who compete so aggressively against each other. In our display business, we work closely with all the display providers on their newest technology. That leads to things like Lotus Glass, which is our newest generation of display glass that is a really beautiful set of science that's optimized, that we've used to optimize the thermal properties of the glass so it can go through the very high temperature processes that are used to make the new flexible OLED displays. In automotive, we have the partnership with Saint-Gobain that I talked about, which takes basically an existing glass, Gorilla, although it's a little bit different composition, and develops all the technology that you'd need to bend it to make it into a windshield, to do the lamination, develop the techniques for customizing it for a particular car and all those sorts of things. So those are some examples of the partnerships that we have. But getting that external deal is very important to us. We sometimes acquire things to help us go into a new area. So for example, in our wireless infrastructure products that are used to solve the problem of what I'd call 5 bars, no service, we bought a small Israeli company that helps us make distributed antenna systems that's now the leader in sports stadiums, and a design company that designs the RF networks that go with that. But these are relatively small acquisitions for us. Those were both a few $100 million acquisitions.
With the introduction of the Gorilla 5, it doesn't mean it's the ending of the Sapphire screening, Sapphire glass.
So there was a lot of talk in the popular press about the potential use of Sapphire in the screens of phones. Sapphire is a man-made material that replicates the gem, the naturally mined sapphire. It's a crystal. The property of sapphire that is truly excellent is it is incredibly scratch resistant. Other than diamond, it's the most scratch resistant material that we know of. The problem with sapphire, the big problem is that because it's a crystal, it's easy to break along the crystal planes. So its drop resistance is very poor relative to Gorilla Glass. Additionally, because it's a crystal, the energy required to manufacture it is extremely high. And it's also reflects about 6% more light than Gorilla Glass, so its sunlight readability is dramatically less. I think the only time that anybody would use a sapphire screen is if they really valued scratch resistance more than anything else. But if they were in that category, I would encourage them to look at the other new product that we introduced in the summer of 2016, which we call Fire. Fire is Gorilla Glass with a laminate structure constructed on the surface that makes it almost as scratch resistant as sapphire, but it retains the optical properties of Gorilla Glass. It can also be curved in easy ways to correspond better to cell phones. That product, Fire, is really in its early stages. It's only used on one product right now, which is the Samsung, new Samsung watch, the Gear 3. But I think as we continue learning to make these laminate structures, our goal is to get it to the scale that you can use it on the front of phones as well. So I don't think sapphire would ever be a significant part of the mobile consumer electronics landscape as a full cover glass.
And interesting about when you try to expand the new market, what's
Yes.
the adjustment that you use when you want to find the new market? So which strategy that
Sure.
you use to point out which industry that you should come and compete
Right.
with them?
So as part of our strategy and capital allocation framework, we have 5 market access platforms. And the reason we try to keep it to these 5 is because we need good partners who share their insights and their roadmaps and really rigorously test what's needed and are able to interact on early prototypes. So, for example, in the automotive industry, where we've had a position in mobile emissions control since the early 1970s, we know the auto manufacturers really well. So when we wanted to go into a new segment of the automotive market, they already were comfortable with Corning. We knew the right people to talk to in the organization. It was relatively straightforward for us to gain traction with the decision makers at the company and get their commitment to do the testing that we're now undergoing and need to get on bigger production cars. If we're going to go into a brand new market like architecture for us, the first thing I would say is you better be using at least one of our 3 core technologies and at least one of our manufacturing and engineering platforms, because you've already decided not to use the column related to market access platforms. So we have to bring real expertise. In those areas, the way that we're working is in conjunction with partners. In this case, View is a company that we've made an equity investment in. I'm on the board of directors of that company, and we have a team that's doing a joint development agreement. So in that case, we're building the commercial capabilities that we need in tandem with another company. Another new area we're getting into is we have a nearly $1 billion businesses in life sciences vessels today. Most of those vessels are used for research in biotech and pharmaceutical labs or for production of cells that are used to grow large molecule drugs. We're going after a new opportunity, which is the vials that are used to package drugs. As biotech has evolved, it's become apparent that there are some problems with the glass that's currently used, which Corning actually invented 101 years ago. It's time for something new there. 100 years is long enough for a product, I think. In that one, there's some real expertise that goes into making the vials themselves and into the tubing. We bought the assets of a company that was making the tubing, and we have a joint venture that goes into making the vials. So in those new areas, we really work hard to find others to work with us. Is that a satisfactory answer?
Yeah, so actually you also have the M&A as well in your company, like merger and acquisition?
We do, yeah, thank you. In our strategy and capital allocation framework, I didn't really say anything about how we utilize our financial strength. One way that we utilize our financial strength is in M&A. We've guided investors that between the time the strategy and capital allocation framework was introduced in October of 2015 and when it ends in 2019, that we expect to do between $1 and $3 billion of acquisitions. In a typical year, we do 3 to 5 acquisitions. Those tend to be in the $100 to $500 million range. We could do something a little smaller. We could do something a little bigger, but doing a big transformative acquisition isn't part of what we do. Recently, most of our acquisition activity has been in the area of optical communications. That's an area where adding a new product to our existing portfolio or acquiring access to a new set of customers is particularly important. The most recent 2 acquisitions we did in that space, one was a company called AFOP, which is based on the West Coast, but was a particular specialist in its manufacturing of certain products in China and gave us a lot of market access in Asia. But more importantly, it brought us a product we were already buying as part of our data center components. So now that's part of Corning. Another one that we just bought in December of last year specialized in ruggedized systems that went optical communication systems that for the military or for oil and gas applications. So for example, optical fiber is incredibly sensitive, its transmission is incredibly sensitive to the environment that surrounds us. Normally when we make cable packaging, we isolate it from the exterior environment, so this is irrelevant. But if you have an oil and gas pipeline and you couple the optical fiber to the pipeline itself and there's a leak, the pipe becomes cold. That changes the index of refraction of the optical fiber, and even on a pipeline that's hundreds of miles long, you can in advance identify where the leak is within 10 centimeters or so. So, there's some cool applications there. People are using the fiber optics to put down on drills for various sensor applications and things like that. So that's an area where we use M&A to get into.
Okay, continue. Hello. So continue the question here. That's the reason you M&A and rather than do it yourself. Is that because of it's a new area where you're not expertise in, or what's the reason on choosing to M&A or rather than doing internal R&D?
Right. Well, the most generic answer to why we do M&A is because we think it's a positive return on investment relative to other things that we could do with the cash. You certainly provided one important reason that we do it, but other reasons are, even in an area that we know well, sometimes people just invent something that is so important and distinctive and protectable that we think we need to own it. The example of that I can think of is 3 years ago, I partnered with our chief technology officer to sponsor the acquisition of a German laser company that had a laser that can process glass in very special ways. And we're excited about what you can do with that, but we haven't really talked about the products that you can make with it yet. So that would be an example of something that when we saw the idea, our researchers were flipping out that they hadn't thought of it. But you either let somebody else go after that opportunity or you do it yourselves. But that would be, for us, that's probably the least frequent reason that we buy something.
So with that, is that any like M&A that you choose to do, which is not in one of those 3, 4, 5? And is that a reason? Or are they always in this like core technology and manufacturing technology?
When we do something outside of our 3, 4, 5, we want to see incredibly high returns on that, potential returns, because we know that our probability of success is much less. If we were doing something outside of our 3, 4, 5, that's probably a place where we'd be putting in a very small amount of money. One of those opportunities that I can think of is related to batteries. It turns out that Corning has a ceramic material that Google actually specified in a patent on very small rechargeable batteries. So we have the scientific part of it, but we had no manufacturing technique for this that we thought was commercially viable, and batteries are not part of our market access platform. So in that case, we helped fund an outside company that has developed a manufacturing technique for this that makes wide ribbons of this flat ceramic that can go into these batteries. So that's an example, of how we would proceed very cautiously about doing something like that. And we have, you could imagine going out and buying the company that makes the batteries from this material. Those types of conversations never come up for us.
Somewhat related, a question on your investment in View Glass.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what was the most exciting. Was it a technology that you were buying, or was it that you could improve that technology and contribute to it, or was it the commercial capability that you spoke of? And if it's commercial capability, do you have plans for other energy efficient building materials or related investments?
Sure. So when we met with View, Corning had deep familiarity with glass that changes its tint. For example, we had worked on photochromic glasses that changed tint with the amount of light for many years. I recently found out that there are approximately 24,001 photochromic glasses that have been melted ever. One was melted at a university, and the other 24,000 we melted. We'd also worked on electrochromics and had never been able to get it to work well enough that we thought was at all commercially viable. So View did a great job of figuring out how to make it commercially viable. Their expertise in thin film is truly impressive. So that got us really excited, but also seeing the commercial potential of it and understanding what using a technically advanced glass could do. So when we signed on with View, there were two parts to the deal. One part was just the normal financial requirements that any investor would have, but the other part was related to a joint development agreement that would evolve View's process to using it on our glass. It gives you faster transitions. It gives you dramatically fewer defects in the surface that you get because we're all optimized for semiconductor fabs and incredibly flat relative to a piece of float glass. And we think will give better color as well. So that JDA has been going well, but hopefully we'll complete it by the end of the year.
How long have you been with View? When was that?
4
transaction?
years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Exciting area, right? And
It is, yeah. Oh, to the other part of your question, which is, do we have other energy-related materials or projects? Absolutely. The one we have talked about publicly in this space is glass optimized for photovoltaic cells. That one is being piloted in Brazil this year, so we're excited about that. We also are a leader through our joint venture with Dow in polysilicons that are used in solar cells as well as semiconductors. We have a few other projects going on as well, but we aren't talking about those publicly yet.